I know. Hi, thank you for joining us tonight. We're here to talk about how to prepare for your first orchestra rehearsal. My name is Carolyn Gilbert. I'm a second-year viola fellow here at New World. I'm from Bloomington, Indiana. I did my undergraduate degree there at IU, and then I did a master's in New York at Juilliard School. I started on violin and I switched to viola when I was 17, just getting ready to go to college. So.
Hi, good evening. My name is Zubaida Azizi, and I'm a second-year violin fellow here at New World. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, so it's kind of a far away place. I started violin when I was 5, and I did my undergrad and master's in the States. And yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Foster Wang. I'm a 4th-year violin fellow here. Started the violin when I was 4 years old, and I did my bachelor's at Harvard and my master's at Juilliard. And thank you all for joining us tonight, and especially for those of you who are joining us through New World Symphony Connect, which is an online community for middle and high school classical musicians. And be sure to check us out on Facebook. We have a group called New World Symphony Connect, NWS Connect. And on Twitter and Instagram.
Oh, sorry.
And also, at New World Symphony Connect, NWS Connect.
Also with us tonight is our very special guest, Alex Kerr, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Alex Kerr. I am a professor at Indiana University and also a concertmaster at the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. I started violin at Indiana. I was in Virginia. Are you hearing like an echo, or is it just me?
No, we're not really hearing you.
Oh, you're not hearing me at all?
Now we are.
Okay, maybe I'll get a little bit closer to the microphone.
Try again.
So hi, everybody. I'm Alex Kerr. I am a professor of violin at Indiana University, and I'm concertmaster of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. I started playing the violin at age 7 in Alexandria, Virginia, and went to the Juilliard School pre-college, then to the Curtis Institute of Music by way of Johns Hopkins University, and graduated there in '92. I was concertmaster of the Charleston Symphony Orchestra in South Carolina, concertmaster of the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, then concertmaster of the Royal Concertmaster Orchestra for 10 years, then came back to teach at IU, and now I am concertmaster in Dallas, and I share that time with my professorship.
Wow. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So today we'll be talking about how to prepare for your first orchestra rehearsal. We want to start by saying that, however much time you have before your first rehearsal, preferably more than a week, you should pick up your music and make sure that you look at it and you know how it sounds, and you listen to recordings, and definitely don't listen to one recording. Try and listen to multiple, and you can do so on YouTube or iTunes or
there's a lot of options now. Mm-hmm. But basically, as soon as you possibly can, pick up your music and just listen to it as much as you can so you get familiar with it.
Yeah, our point here is mainly that the bulk of your preparation should be done before the rehearsal. You don't want to be the person who's sight reading their way through rehearsal. Yeah. And so we have 2 parts that we'd like to emphasize. Preparation away from your actual instrument, which is, listening, as we've mentioned, and the actual practice.
Yeah, which is also important.
Right. And maybe, Alex, you can talk a little bit more about the preparation process before the initial rehearsal.
Sure. I think when you first get your music, I like to get my music in a professional situation as early as I can. Luckily, I bow the music, so I get it very early, probably months and months in advance. And I usually make a copy for myself, just keep it in my stacks. I have sort of a to-do stack that starts off like this, and I love it every single day when I get fewer and fewer that I have to deal with. But so I start with a gigantic stack of music, and I do exactly what you guys do. I pick up the music as fast as I can. I get a recording of it, at least 1, 2, 3 recordings of the piece. And especially now with YouTube, I have a CD collection of probably 2,000, 3,000 CDs. But now, they've been pretty much rendered useless by Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music. So there's no excuse for not being able to sort of get a recording of something, and a very good recording. And when it comes to recordings, I would actually stress getting contemporary recordings. It's interesting, especially with like repertoire like Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, early repertoire. You're really going to get a better idea of tempi, or how fast the thing goes, by more contemporary recordings of the piece. If you listen, for instance, although I love it, to like Von Karajan and the Berlin Philharmonic's recordings of any of the Beethoven symphonies, they're beautiful, but they're probably about half as fast as what people do now. So you really want to sort of be aware of what's happening contemporary.
Well, so like that actually leads in really nicely to our next point, which was, as you're listening, the kind of the different things that you should look at in the music as you're like paying attention to what you're hearing, like making note of different tempos, when the music changes tempos, and even like figuring out with the metronome marking.
Yeah.
Like,
right. With
so that you
like
can practice.
Those metronome apps, you can actually tap along with the music and try to figure out what the tempo is.
I never had any of that when I was a child.
Yeah, we're so spoiled.
So convenient now.
Click. Got it. No, but it's really smart actually to go through it. And one thing I like to do is, number one, every time I see a tempo change, like a tempo marking, anything in a language, whether Italian, German, or French, I just circle it. And put either eyeglasses next to it, just to know that there's going to be a tempo change at that point. And sometimes it's more obvious in a recording, sometimes it's less obvious in a recording. So just to have an idea that something is going to happen at that specific spot. But I'll also go much more in depth, to the point where if I'm playing more contemporary repertoire, like, especially like music right now, 21st century music, which has so many different time signatures, that I'll actually just go through all the time signatures and find out whether I have to divide things in 3 to 2. Like if it's a 5/8 bar, 3 + 2, 2 + 3. If it's now we have things like 11/4 bars and God knows what else, different combinations. So I try to really take it apart mathematically, and just even put like a triangle when it's 3s, and a slash when it's a duple meter, and just to have an idea of what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, going back to what you said about directions being in different languages, it's also useful to circle those and then look them up so that you know exactly what they mean in English.
Look them up on this.
Yeah.
Everyone has one.
But okay, if you're like just starting out and you're like new to orchestra and you haven't gotten one of those yet, you can always just type it in Google and it'll tell you.
Yeah.
But yes, you should also get one of those.
It's great. Especially when you're doing Mahler, when they're like, it's not just German, but it's really, really Viennese German. That like, and he's using so many colloquialisms that it's really good to know exactly what he's saying. There's lots of directions. Mahler, Richard Strauss, the same. There's so many different directions. And then when you start getting the French repertoire, just every little nuance is really important. So it's good to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to your point about contemporary music and difficult meters, I find what's useful for me is looking at video recordings on YouTube. You can actually watch the conductor beating these complex patterns and try to follow along. And I find sometimes that's more helpful for me.
Yeah.
Just seeing and also it's like you're participating in the performance in some way.
Right.
Well, seeing someone conduct it versus just listening. Sometimes it's hard when you're just listening to figure out what the beat is or what the tempo is, because you're looking at your part.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, also, IMSLP a lot of the time will have a score. So if you want to go online and see if they actually have a score, that could be more helpful than just following along with your own part. But if you watch a video recording, then you can see somebody actually conducting what the beat is. And that just basically anything you can do to be more prepared, to feel more comfortable, so that when you get into your first rehearsal, you can get out of your music, which is like,
it's more fun that way.
is right. Then you actually get to play the music instead of freaking out and like not knowing where you are and
not knowing what you should be doing.
Yeah, that's a good point about the score reading. Some people might be intimidated by looking at a score. You know, you have all these different instruments, different clefs to read in, but maybe Alex, you have some tips about what you should be looking out if you're trying to follow along with the score.
Well, I mean, basically the instrumentation. You're always looking for things that you're doubling or things that you're reacting to. So a lot of times you'll have a viola that's doubling something that's in a very similar register, or a cello that's doubling a bassoon. Always looking for things. Violin, I'm always doubling, some kind of a flute or a clarinet or an oboe, some type of upper wind instrument. You'd be surprised though. There have been times like in Shostakovich 7 where I'm actually, it's so much easier for me to cue a suspended cymbal because we have the exact notes at the very end of this movement. So I know that when I'm looking at this part, I'm like, okay, there's a suspended cymbal player that's doing the exact same thing and I'm betting that he's going to be looking at me. So if I have contact with him and he knows that I know that he's there, then it just facilitates things that much more. But there are times when I've pizzicati with clarinets. In that piece, for instance, Shostakovich 7, we just played in Dallas, and where I'm maybe cueing a clarinet, making sure we're in contact, or a flute, or the oboe. It happens all the time. So if you know with whom you're playing, it adds that sort of a measure of comfort, but also makes the conductor's life a hell of a lot easier, and they'll want to hire you more often.
So you're speaking definitely from like a concertmaster point of view, which is important, but like even as just a regular just anyone anyone in the orchestra, like how would you say it is just as important?
Of course. I mean, the funny thing is that a leader is only as good as the people behind them.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, a concertmaster can do absolutely nothing without the people behind him or her.
Yeah.
So you have to, the more intelligent, the more educated a group is behind you, the better it's going to be, because everybody then knows what they're listening to and with whom they're supposed to be playing. And when you have everyone on the same page like that, it's so much easier. Back to one point you guys were talking about beat patterns and learning beat patterns off YouTube. That's especially with contemporary repertoire, but also Stravinsky. Just knowing what you're doing so that you're not completely freaking out. Because a rehearsal of Rite of Spring, your first rehearsal of Rite of Spring, if you have no idea what's coming at you, I mean, there's a point where I would give up. I need to go home now. But if you actually know that even without a conductor, if you're listening to the timpani player, you could just literally play off the timpani and you'll be fine. So having that knowledge of the score and knowing the beat patterns, it just makes it that much easier to play in a piece like that.
Right.
Well, especially like for you've probably played with so many different conductors, and they all kind of do their own thing, right? So with that changing, no matter what they do, you can be very sure.
Yeah, and not only do conductors do things differently musically, but they also beat things completely differently. You'll have somebody doing the Adagietto of Mahler 5. Some people will subdivide it, like chop it like it's teppanyaki, and then people that will just basically just like put the baton down and just do it in 4.
Yeah.
You know? And so you get such a range of things that if you allow for that, if you allow for flexibility, if you know the music so well in itself as what it is, and then that in a sense allows you to have flexibility when it comes to somebody else's beat patterns.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So now that you've done the preparation away from your instrument, let's move on to the actual practicing. And what we're trying to go for is efficient, smart practicing of your orchestra parts. And of course, you want to do slow practicing. But are there any other tips you have for?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first thing I start doing is getting my left hand in order. Okay. If your left hand isn't in order, you're toast. It's over. So really take it note by note, literally practicing note by note, making the connections so that you really feel comfortable with your shifts, with all of the different impracticalities of playing.
Now, is this, would you prioritize certain sections? Would you break it down by section? Would you start from the beginning?
My ego is immediately gravitating towards solos.
Yeah.
Like the first thing I do as a concertmaster is circle. Solo.
For us mere mortals. I'm just kidding.
No, I think the most important thing is to find the most difficult sections and get them out of the way first.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, because a lot of people come at, especially, okay, a whole program of music, that's a lot of music. It's a lot of stuff to get through, and people get overwhelmed and they don't know how to break it down or sort of approach it.
We'll start with solos, then go into anything that's exposed. So that you'll learn that from your recording. Anything where you hear, if you're a violinist or a cellist or whatever, it doesn't matter what instrument. If it's an exposed part, you better know it. If it's fast and it's exposed, because like you can sit there and we can talk about, like, for instance, those of you out there who have played Heldenleben by Richard Strauss. There's the battle scene. In the battle scene, you have this, this all the brass players are going insane, and the percussion, everybody's nuts, and the violin section is doing this for about an entire page, and you can hear about 4 notes. Now, it's really nice to have that perfectly down, but there are lots more places that are much more exposed in that piece that you really have to know well. So the first thing I'll do is find out the most exposed spots and really learn them well. In general, I just have a metronome on. Know where you want to end up, but start way before and just get comfy with it. Mm-hmm. And there are certain little technical principles that'll help your work. Like if you see legato, slow your bow down. If you see short notes, make sure you have core and slow your bow down. If you have string crossings, slow your bow down. Your life that much easier. So you don't have to practice so many different variables. Mm-hmm. So, and then once I go through those exposed parts, then I go for the nasty sections, like just things that are just nasty, and I really want to get around and just feel comfortable with them. And at that point, then other exposed parts that are like high, slow, dangerous, where you know the intonation is going to be a factor, where you know that playing in a group of 10 people or 12 people, you don't want to be the person that sticks out. Mm-hmm. So really practice those parts so your intonation is really excellent. And for intonation, I always, as a string player, I always practice with a drone. And I mean, and a string drone. I don't practice ever with tuners. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is that tuners don't account for what we do with chords, like lowering fifths and things like that. And the thing is, if you actually think about it, like if you play a G minor chord and it spreads over 2 octaves, or C minor if you're viola, and it spreads over the 2 octaves of all 4 strings, then the point is that the top voice is going to be lower than the bottom voice, because we've at that point over 2 octaves have lowered the fifth 3 times. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If it doesn't account for that tempered intonation, not going to work. So I always use a lower string drone to work with intonation.
Alex, I have a question about so practicing your part and all the passages, So chances are, as string players and as orchestral musicians, we'll play, a symphony many times throughout our lifetime. And so, there are definitely things I've played in youth orchestra that I know I played them, but, if I play it again, my fingers don't, but then there are other things that somehow the muscle memory just like comes back, and then I'll know it immediately. So how do you practice something so that you can, obviously you won't remember it 100% forever, but you can really absorb it for a long time?
Well, one thing you might want to do in general, I mean, especially if you're thinking of becoming a professional musician, is that if you can, whether you're a concertmaster or not, if you can get practice parts of the piece and just put in the digits, put in the stuff that you did, just have a record of it. I have an entire, I could show you, take my camera and go across to the other. I have filing cabinets full of music. There's a filing cabinet behind me full of orchestral parts of almost every symphony I've ever done. So just having those there saves me so much time, because I can just go back to them, and I may change a lot of the things I did before, but I might not. And so it just saves me just hours of just grueling digit, which ones am I doing? Just saves me time.
Like this whole process that we've been talking about so far tonight, like marking places that you need to practice, or just having that already so that you can go back and say, oh, I know that I need to practice that because I marked it already.
Exactly. Also, one thing you should think about doing is that, remember, when we learn something, we're actually trying to cross synapses. We're trying to, like, all our motor neurons are trying to go and cross synapses, and the more we understand, the better we learn. So the more things you can learn about something from every different angle, whether it's the left hand and the right hand, the combination of the two hands, that plus the sound you're trying to create, that plus the rhythm you're playing. If you try to go it from every single angle, the more you understand, the more you're going to remember. And there are, and without fail, the pieces I remember the most are the ones that I've come at with so much detail that I can remember every little thing about with whom I'm playing. Am I doubling a triangle, for God's sake? Now, I can tell you if I'm like with a triangle, with a bassoon, with a snare drum. I know what's going on, and those I remember so well, and I almost don't have to look at them anymore. There's so much in my head. I could play Mahler 5 in my sleep.
We were talking about putting in the digits, writing fingerings, and for us string players, the standard procedure is for the outside player to write fingerings on the top, and inside player to write fingerings in on the bottom, so that fingerings don't get crossed. There's no confusion. But
do you actually? Oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to ask, what's your opinion on the amount of fingerings one should put in? Because I know that might be a sensitive topic with some colleagues, and some people like to keep it very clean.
Yeah. It's hard. I think this is the thing that's hard for section players, because anybody might get sick at any moment, and you might have to jump from stand 5 to stand 2. And so the problem is you can't take your digits with you. Okay. And that's, the thing is, I like to, my stand partner will say I'm lying, so I'm not going to lie. I do put more digits than I probably should. But I put the fewest number that I feel comfortable with. Like I usually put them where I shift. And I see people, like, there have been people I've seen with like digits over every single note.
Why is that not good? Or why would you not recommend that?
It's too much. Too confusing, and it gets in your, it gets to the point where you're so fixated on numbers that you can't actually just experience anything else that's going on around you. If the mind is looking at like such tunnel vision at just digit, basically, I doubt you can even listen to yourself. The concentration is so focused on reading numbers that it's you can't really focus on anything else around you.
But maybe like in as you said, you have a practice part. So in that one, if you want to maybe write more fingerings in that one, just for yourself, so like when you're practicing it, you can get that in,
Yeah, I can even show. If I go back, literally, I can like Beethoven 3, and there's like tons. You probably can't see, but there's tons of digits. But that's a practice part that I'll always have. I've got every Beethoven symphony, every Brahms symphony, every Mahler symphony, every Stravinsky ballet, you name it. It's back here in my files. So yeah, I'll put anything in there. I'll put dynamics. I've actually put different like phrase markings from different conductors, just to have like this person did this person did that, just to have an idea of like what different people have done, and the ones I hated, the ones I liked.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have a question. In a first rehearsal, okay, pretend you're not leading the entire orchestra for a second. In the first rehearsal, say you prepared as much as you could, but you still don't feel very comfortable, like you're still missing out on something, or you just don't feel comfortable. In that first rehearsal, is there like one thing that's more important than the rest? Or if you had to let something go, I don't know, this is a terrible question, but like, is there something that you should actually like completely focus on above all others? Or
yeah, rhythm. Even notes, you'll probably get more notes than you thought you would. You'll probably get a few more notes but rhythm, there's nothing, it's funny, there's an old saying in Holland in Amsterdam where I've lived for 10 years. It basically, if you stick your head above the sand, it gets cut off. That's why the orchestra played so well together, because part of the culture was you really didn't want to stick out. So rhythm is incredibly important. There's nothing that annoys your stand partners more than bad rhythm. If you start pushing people, if you start slowing them down, it's awful.
So not necessarily like wrong rhythms, but I mean, not wrong rhythms either, but
that too.
Staying in tempo, not rushing and not slowing down, like staying as a unit with your section.
And if you feel a little bit weird, play a little bit softer. And at that point, I would look, if I were in the back, I would start looking towards my section leaders, just making sure what part of the bow they're in. Like, are they at the frog? Or are they at the tip, at the middle? Are they playing it off the string? Are they playing it on the string? And it's really hard to sort of like to see that sometimes. I like to, as often as possible, to put those in my parts, into the parts for everybody as a leader, like just on, off, things like that, brush, just to give certain little cues.
Yeah.
But it's always good to just know what part of the bow the person is in. And that provides that sort of like unanimity of approach. But rhythm would be the one thing. If I like was really worried about something, I wouldn't want to choke and come in wrong or because that's embarrassing. I mean, there's nothing worse than that.
So that's actually a very good transition to the actual rehearsal day, the day of rehearsal. So we're thinking, especially if it's your first rehearsal, you should probably want to get there, 15, 20 minutes early at least to make sure that you're comfortable, you can warm up, you feel good, you know where you're sitting, and who you're sitting with and all of that. And then, just a little bit, we should probably touch a little bit on like orchestra etiquette once your rehearsal starts. So about, I guess, starting off with, speaking or asking questions or in rehearsal. So depending on where you are sitting, especially as a string player, if you're in the leadership position or you're in the back or you're in the middle, when it's okay for you to speak up or, ask questions and who you should direct your questions to, whether it's your principal or the conductor. If you could touch on that.
If you're talking about a musical idea or things like that, I mean, in general, I like it when people go through me, and then I'll always ask the conductor. And I always tell people that if they want to ask me a question, like privately or something, that's fine. If they want to ask it at the time of the rehearsal, it'd be great if they could send it through the people to me, and then I will either one, answer the question, or two, I will ask the conductor if I don't have an answer for it. If everybody thinks they can sort of get up and ask a question, it becomes bedlam. Then
there's that sort of chain of command basically within the section. Yeah. So if someone further back or within the section has a question, you prefer that they bring it through you. Definitely, or to my stand partner. I mean, Nathan and I have such a great relationship that basically, if they address, if I'm busy with something, please address him. He'll know he'll know what I want because he's Nathan and he knows whatever I want when it comes to that. He's just him, and so he'll either know or he'll direct the question to me. And so it always gets done. I think in general, the policy that I like to think of is if I don't know the answer, I will definitely ask the conductor. I don't ever answer if I don't know. I don't ever say anything dumb. If I really, it's kind of pointless. I mean, I'd rather, like state ignorance rather than show it. It's a different thing. But I think that is that chain of command. There has to be that chain of command. But it's definitely okay to ask questions during rehearsal as long as you do it like in a subtle manner. So you're not like just disrupting people, but like asking things like, should this be a bow or where should we be in the bow? I don't know if it's not being shown clearly. Well, and there's lots of questions to ask. Like for instance, there are times in a professional orchestra where a library is just their task of maybe 3 or 4 people in a library having to bow an entire season. There will be mistakes because people are human. There will be mistakes where one bowing didn't get in or one up bow was overlooked. It's going to happen. So those types of questions, of course, like, we don't have a bowing here, and of course, then at that point, if it comes up to me,
somebody from the back will usually say something like, Alex, we don't have a bowing. That's okay. If you want to yell something like that, that's fine. But if it's something like, Alex, or, are we phrasing to the second measure of bar, 3 or something, and it's like, I have no idea. It's a really, what is the subtlety of this phrase? Are you vibrating on this second? The more complex the question, the more you should ask at the break.
Yeah. When there's actually something that if it can be answered with like a yes or a no, or like,
a demonstration
that's answerable. Yeah. So that could be asked. Otherwise, maybe bring it up to your section leader at a time when they can actually.
And there's lots of questions like that. There are times where like you'll have things that were written in for a different from a different conductor, and you want to clarify that dynamic. You want to clarify a bow stroke. So there's lots of things like that that can happen during rehearsal. So all those types of questions are really good to ask, because there's nothing worse than being in the back of a section and you feeling like you're in your own little island, and your information is not getting back to you enough. So you feel that you're already insecure from the fact that you can't hear anything where you are.
Right.
But then to not know bowings, or not knowing, if we're in a certain part of the bow, or not knowing if this phrasing is correct, or not knowing if we're on or off, it's that makes it even worse.
Well, and like in a first rehearsal, that's when a lot of that stuff gets done, or should hopefully get done, is like clarifying things like that. So if you're a section leader, you just want to make sure you're really sensitive about passing things back, because it's difficult for people in the back to see that all the time or hear it.
If it's a very important thing to say, get up and turn around. Because as often as you think it's going to happen, the concertmaster turns around and they say, send this back, send this bowing back. It never gets back.
Yeah.
Because by the time it's gotten to the third stand, you've moved on to something else.
Right.
Better to just take the time, get it out of the way, and just tell it. Stand up and tell everybody what's going on. And
so how would you address, how would you how would you do this by interrupting the conductor without, upsetting him?
Like say maestro, maestra, whatever. I would say, excuse me, can I take a second to change a bowing?
Okay. Yeah.
I'll always ask for permission. My job as a leader is to facilitate the conductor's life in general, just to make his or her life much easier. So any way I can do that without disrupting is what I'm going to do. So I'll try to be as generous as possible with, or I should say, as I will say things, as few things as I can during a rehearsal, and try to get as much into what I say in those few things as possible.
Yeah.
But there are times where I have to interrupt. Things have to be said.
Yes, but also like I've had section, or if it's something more complex where you can't just address everything and say it quickly or say it concisely, then maybe wait and like tell your whole section afterwards, or
I'll put it in the part myself sometimes.
Yeah.
During the break, I'll just go to everybody's part and like circle the measure and just put what I like, the change. I do things like that a lot.
Also, Alex, what would be, when you're in that leadership position, what would be the, diplomatic way of addressing your section so that you're with respect and, so that you're not saying anything offensive or,
acting
hurt
like,
anyone, right.
Acting like I'm better than all of you.
Well, first thing, never ever use the word you. Ever. Always the word we. We, and they're also like, I wouldn't even, if let's say we're rushing or someone is rushing, then I will say something like, ladies and gentlemen, can we please be a little bit more aware of this bar? We have a tendency to be on the front side of the beat.
Okay.
Or pleasant euphemism for you are rushing. Oh my God, stop. Things like that happen a lot. Or I'll turn around and say, to change a bowing, it's always about we. Because again, if it's not going well, it's partly my fault. Maybe I could have been clearer, maybe the conductor would have been clearer, maybe something else happened, but for some reason it's not gelling. So it's also my fault too. So always use the word we, always stand up, and always look to the very back of the section. And sometimes even, sometimes it's a little bit intimidating for certain people for you to look them in the eye. So look over them. Like look to the last stand and just make everybody feel comfortable. So
but don't stare at somebody.
No, because
then they might feel like you're singling them out.
Yeah.
Like, you are rushing.
Yeah, and I'll do that privately. Like if it's one person, like I will, even if it's one person, I'll always say we, and can we be careful?
Mhm.
But if the person doesn't get the we thing, because sometimes people don't think it's them. I mean, sometimes they're convinced that they're right, and usually the ones that are the most convinced are the ones that are definitely wrong. So I would say, in general, when that happens, then I usually address them privately and say, look, by the way, the we was you. Like, just be careful. And never in an intimidating way, and never in a way that's like they feel as if you're attacking. It's just always a feeling like, look, it's just that we need to be together.
Mhm.
For the better of all.
Yeah, so I think all the advice we've given today, we've heard today, is really aimed at increasing your comfort level at the first orchestra rehearsal. And what you mentioned, Alex, about hitting the piece at many angles, different angles, to really have it in your head, knowledge of the score, different tempis, practice, writing fingerings, all of that will just help you feel comfortable at the first rehearsal and, be concentrated on what's important, which is the music making. So I think it's about time to wrap up.
Yeah, do you have any final
Closing
sort of
remarks?
summary things you want to say?
No, I think in general, I think the more prepared you are before you get to the rehearsal, the happier you're going to be. It's much more fun when you feel engaged in something. And when you feel as if you're alone, or if you're just intimidated, or if you're insecure, you're never going to have fun.
Mhm.
And it's a bad feeling to have. I love the fact that if I can be more open to things around me, then it's a really great experience. Then music making can be in a more chamber music type of feel. Then orchestral playing can be that, where literally it's a gigantic chamber music group and you're all in it together. But if you're alone because you're that insecure and you're just struggling to find things, it's just not very fun.
Yeah. And I don't know, I've definitely worked with some people before, and they just are so overwhelmed by the whole process that they sort of just freak out. And I'd say no matter what, you at least have 10 minutes to sit down and just listen to it, to listen to different recordings, at least do that before you show up to a first rehearsal. Even if you don't have your music with you, just know the piece, just be familiar with it. I don't know, for me, that's what I tell people the most. It's for me. I don't know if you have a different.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think it's when you see people and some people like they don't even know the basic, how the piece goes. And I hate to be so unbelievably blasé, how it goes. Know how it goes. Oh my God, and even that's much more fun. Just to have an idea of the groove, and if it's a Mahler symphony, well, it's an hour out of your life, and it's really a great hour of your life. And by the way, if you're doing this as a profession, you need to spend the hour of your life, it should be something that you enjoy doing. And if you're in high school, it's just much more fun, to actually be able to enjoy the experience. Because that's the whole point of playing in an orchestra, is the sort of the communication between everyone. That's what makes it so great, is that and performing that and doing all that in front of an audience. That's the best part.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for joining us, and thank you for joining us this evening. Online. Yeah. The next virtual hangout will be March 4th at 6:45.
March 8th.
Oh, sorry.
March 8th.
It's my handwriting. Okay.
March 8th.
And this week at the New World Symphony, we'll be featuring 3 of our own fellows in the concerto competition winners. February 20th and February 21st, we'll have concerts. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Playing with our colleagues.
And coming up before you know it is the side-by-side with New World Symphony. Mm-hmm. So maybe some of you watching are watching this to prepare for your first rehearsal with us. So hopefully you take some of our advice.
Yeah, lots to look forward to and
Yeah.
lots to work towards. So
We're very
yeah,
excited.
thank you everybody for joining us,
Yeah.
and hopefully see you next time.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Alex.
Hello.
Yay!
Yay.
Sorry. I made
That's-
that
no,
look
that's-
like a 4.
That's my handwriting. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, oh, that's okay. Thanks, Alex.